Dricus Du Plessis just had the craftiest performance of his entire career, not only beating Sean Strickland, but outstriking him, only standing with him. The guy with the best defense in the upper weight classes got shut down by crafty Du Plessis. Tatiana Suarez, the real hardcore fans' boogie woman, got completely outgrappled by Zhang Weili. And we had a bunch of other solid fights on the early prelims. Some of the fights, as expected, just didn't deliver. Why were they on the main card? We'll get to them. But this was honestly a pretty good card, the way that it played out. And you know what? Because of how fun the main event was and how good of a performance the Dricus Du Plessis had, I don't feel like I was totally robbed with this pay-per-view. But, you know, the first thing I'm going to talk about is, I mentioned this in my breakdown, and I got to say, I am just so impressed with Dricus's improvement. And before we talk about Dricus's, improvement and how amazing his performance was, I will say that Strickland, he did look a little mentally off. I will just say that. He looked very flat from the moment this fight started. But, as the fight went on, we saw Strickland let his hands go a little bit. And, there's always that moment at the last 10 seconds of the fight where Dricus and Strickland are brawling. And Strickland looks like if he were to just do that at least 10 times during the fight, he could actually maybe do a lot better and win. Because whenever he lets his hands go and brawls with Dricus, you would expect Dricus to be the guy to get the better of the brawls, but actually Strickland always wins those last 10-second brawls when he just lets his hands go, which just goes to show Strickland's biggest issue has always been being too tentative and too reserved. And that's why I picked Dricus, because I said Strickland just doesn't throw enough offense. Sure, if you look at the stats, Strickland's an offensive juggernaut. He broke Michael Bisping's record. But when you actually watch him fight, it just seems like he never lets his hands go. And he certainly never commits to any right hands. But listen, Dricus Du Plessis outstruck Sean Strickland. This is the same guy that totally shut down Israel Adesanya and his kicking game. When Adesanya fought Strickland, Strickland was checking everything, making Adesanya miss. Dricus Du Plessis' kicks, the leg kicks, the body kicks, he was doubling up, so crafty, he was feinting. We don't really see Dricus feint that often. And he was getting Sean Strickland a bite on them. And again, there's a difference between feinting at range and, box, those type of feints, and then feinting after you've landed a big couple of power bombs. A couple of Captain Underpants windmill punches, and then you start feinting, and then Strickland starts biting on them. Dude, I was just so impressed with this, man. This was such an unbelievable performance, and he was kind of alluding to this actually maybe being possible, because Dricus was saying in the build-up to this fight, he said that Strickland is a tricky customer. Number one, tricky customer in the South African accent. There's something that makes me think that we're going to see something crafty. And I said, Dricus is calling Strickland a tricky customer. And he's also alluding to being crafty. And I was like, dude, Sean Strickland and his tool bag. He's very good at what he does. But which fighter is more likely to actually have tricks up their sleeve? Right? And it's Dricus. He's just got so many things going for him. And yes, we talk about this guy having an ugly style, but dude, he has so many different techniques, and he's the best in the world at imposing his will. And that's the difference that we saw in this fight, and that's why Dricus just keeps fucking winning. No, he doesn't have better technique with his boxing than Robert Whittaker, and no, his kicks don't look as crisp as Adesanya, and his defense is not the prettiest. But he believes in himself and his style so much, and he just goes out there and follows the game plan to a T and doesn't hesitate at all. And that's what won him this fight. From the moment the fight started, Dricus Du Plessis picked up right where he left off. He said he was going to do that, and he started mixing it up. He wasn't second-guessing anything. He was kicking Sean Strickland to the body. He must have caught Strickland with 30 head kicks in this fight. I mean, his kicking game is really underrated, and again, the feints don't mean shit unless you're actually throwing offense. And it just seemed like, Sean Strickland, he's a guy that imposes his will. He drags people into that close quarters boxing range and kind of drowns them and makes them miss. But Dricus Du Plessis, from the moment this fight started, started letting go the kitchen sink and then started feinting. And of course, he's got a lot of power, so you have to respect it. Sean Strickland, a couple of minutes into this fight, just looked too tentative and too worried about getting hit. And Dricus is just a master at mixing it up. He's a master at imposing his will. And to outstrike what most people believe to be the best striker at middleweight is just really fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Listen, 50-45 against Sean Strickland, breaking his nose. I thought that, there are some moments where a fighter will get rocked, and more often than not these days, I see people let them off the hook. Bisping says, don't let him off the hook. But people clown Bisping because he used to fight a middleweight and all that, and he'll say that about a bantamweight fight when, bantamweights can knock you out with one mistake. But, Zhang Weili rocked Tatiana Suarez, and she's, patient and shooting a fucking takedown. Dricus Du Plessis, I actually think this is one of those moments where when he rocked Sean Strickland, he was headhunting a little bit too much, running after him a little bit too much. And I thought that maybe if he didn't rush it, he could have actually gotten the finish. Either way, this guy is a master at imposing his will. He's super crafty. When I'm talking about the feints, not only was he feinting after landing big bombs, but this guy would pick his leg halfway up like he's about to throw a question mark kick. And he would stop midway through, and then he would go to the body or something like that. You know what I mean? He's just so good at just making things happen and not second guessing himself. And that's a big issue in the UFC. So many fighters just can't impose their will because they're just too worried about what their opponent's doing. And Dricus has a granite chin, so I guess he can get away with making mistakes here and there. But this was a masterclass on the feet from a guy that we used to call the ugliest striker in this division. And he's now beaten Adesanya. He's beaten Sean Strickland twice. He's beaten Robert Whittaker. He's beaten Darren Till. He's beaten Derek Brunson. He's beaten Brad Tavares. This guy is starting to put together an incredible resume. I'd say that if he beats Khamzat Chimaev, we're going to have to start talking about this guy as neck and neck with Anderson Silva, honestly. And I know people are not going to like that. I'm not saying he's past Anderson yet. I'm not even saying that if he beats Khamzat, he would have passed Anderson. But when it comes to the competition, man, it won't even be close. I think this guy's a few fights away from being the middleweight GOAT, honestly. And he just keeps getting so much better. And again, the reason why I picked Dricus to win this fight, and I thought it was going to be closer than it was, but it's because, again, you watch Strickland fight, and it's yeah, he'll throw the teeps, yeah, he'll throw the jabs, but he never really lets go any power punches, any right hands. And I just can't trust Strickland to actually up the offense. Whereas Dricus Du Plessis, even if it's going to be tough to hit Strickland clean on the chin, I can always trust him to land the leg kicks and the body kicks and to have those tricks up his sleeve, the crafty ones. Because, again, he said Strickland's a tricky customer. I can't do a South African accent, but I love the way that Dricus said tricky customer to describe Sean Strickland. It's just hilarious. But this guy is so good, man. It's unbelievable. I didn't expect this. I was actually kind of surprised to see this happen. And again, so much for saying, we're going to go to war, guys. We're going to go to war, guys. And he's I swear, for 2 rounds in the middle of this fight, Strickland was just backing up and Du Plessis was just beating the shit out of him. But again, I'll bring this up one more time. And I brought this up after the Paulo Costa fight that Strickland had. I'm going to talk about the last 10 seconds. And the same thing happened when he fought Dricus the first time. Strickland always dominates those brawls. When he just says, fuck it, 10 more seconds, let's actually brawl. It seems like nobody can hit him in those moments. Du Plessis doesn't have any success in those moments. Strickland starts lighting up Du Plessis and starts hitting him with bombs. If we only saw a fraction of that every single round, this guy could actually win more fights. But he only does it for 10 seconds every single fight. Again, when he actually let his hands go against Paulo Costa and went after him, right, he would dominate him. Costa would be 10 seconds away from being knocked down or whatever. But he just never actually does any of that in a fight, for the most part. So, I don't know. Sean Strickland, he didn't look switched on from the moment this fight started, but I can't say that like, oh, this is, just an off night. No, I mean, Du Plessis just really freaking showed him up with craftiness, mixed it up perfectly. The feints were on point. He got respect with the power. Like, that's when the feints actually mean something, when you're in your opponent's face and you're landing tons of punches. Again, feints don't mean shit if you're throwing 7 strikes around. Just an unbelievable performance for Dricus Du Plessis. Cardio held up again. I was getting a little bit worried after the second round because it looked like Dricus Du Plessis was breathing really heavy and he had already won the first 2 rounds. And I was worried that he was going to slow down, and Strickland seemed to be getting a little bit more into it. But 4th and 5th, even though the body language may have looked like Dricus was tired, he was still throwing a lot of output, still doing really well. This guy's cardio is unbelievable too. I kind of like his chances more against Khamzat now, right? Because if Khamzat can't submit Dricus in the first round, I think Khamzat, who's going to come out the gates guns blazing as always, sure, he might be able to take Dricus down in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever. But I think the chances for Khamzat are really him getting a finish. That's the way he's going to win a fight against Dricus. And I think after the first round, those chances plummet a lot. So if Dricus can survive that first round, I really see that it's going to be a easy fight for him. So I might even consider picking Dricus Du Plessis, even though Khamzat Chimaev is just so skilled. It's not like Dricus can't be taken down. So it's possible that Khamzat can win, but man, this was an unbelievable fight. If you were to tell me a year ago that Dricus Du Plessis would school Sean Strickland on the feet and like expose Sean Strickland's defense and get all the kicks through the guard and just light him up, break his nose, not even have to shoot any takedowns while at it, I wouldn't have believed you. So what a performance from Dricus Du Plessis. So crafty, mixing it up so well. And even though his style isn't pretty, I think he is one of the best strikers in the middleweight division. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, well, he's got the takedown threat. Yeah, but like, come on, he shot 1 fucking takedown in the entire fight. He's outstriking Sean Strickland in a pure kickboxing battle. Like, okay, let's say after that takedown was shot and before the takedown was shot, they were just doing kickboxing rules. You really think Sean Strickland, oh, well, now Sean Strickland's going to let his hands go? Nope. In a pure kickboxing battle, Dricus Du Plessis would have won last night too. Straight up. Okay? Straight up. And people were just like, what are you saying, man? Oh yeah, Dricus Du Plessis, that threat of the takedown was just so present last night. Yeah, fucking right. Sean Strickland knows he can get right back up to his feet. He doesn't give a fuck about the takedowns. Come on. And he got right back up to his feet. He knows he can get right back up to his feet because he fought Dricus the first time when he was shooting takedowns. So yeah. Takedown threat, that may have played a tiny role, but Dricus is just a better striker than Sean Strickland. We saw it. Unbelievable. So he's champ for a reason. Let's get on to the next one. Zhang Weili and Tatiana Suarez. Listen, I don't dislike Tatiana Suarez, but I've always thought that the fans highly overrated her because she was like the one woman that actually imposed her will and grappled. Like, if you look at these divisions, like Erin Blanchfield is like a grappler. Oh, Erin Blanchfield's going to take everyone down. Tatiana Suarez was like that for the strawweight division. And because she was inactive and you didn't really get to see her fight that much, that kind of gave her some mystique. Oh, she's in the shadows. People don't understand the boogie woman's coming. All the wannabe hardcore fans, Tatiana, dude, I think she's going to win, man. And what they didn't understand is that when it comes to WMMA, there's a reason why the champions are so dominant, is because they're usually leagues ahead of everyone else. And it's just simply because the talent pool is a lot less deep. There aren't that many people that go into WMMA. So the chances of there being a huge talent gap between the number one contender and everyone else, or the champion and everyone else, is a lot greater than if there's so many people in a division. Naturally, competition is going to be stiffer. It's like Anderson Silva in his heyday. Weren't that many people going into MMA, so he was so dominant, right? Why is Zhang Weili so dominant? Aside from her being just really technically sound, because she's actually just very skilled, she's just fast. She's explosive. And Tatiana Suarez is out here moving around at 2 miles per hour, and you got DC saying, bro, no, bro. She's going to get the takedown, bro. You don't understand. She's like a Khabib on the ground. And then Zhang Weili just fucking underhooks her, shoves her away. And then as this fight goes on, we start to see Zhang Weili 3 minutes of control time, 4 minutes of control time, 5 minutes of control time. So Tatiana Suarez, the boogie woman of strawweight, got out-grappled and completely shut down. What was this, a 50-43? So, listen, I know that some people are going to be saying, oh, it's easy to say this after the fact, but like, come on, man. When it comes to WMMA, it's as simple as if you have somebody that's actually extremely fast and explosive and can cause damage and is athletic, they're always going to beat their opponent. They will, because everybody else moves around like a tortoise. 2 miles per hour shooting. It's a Curtis Blade style of takedown coming your way. And I guess that's enough to, become the boogie woman. But the point is, Zhang Weili is actually explosive. She's actually dangerous. And she looks like somebody that's actually very skilled. She is one of the most skilled fighters in the UFC. So, I mean, listen, I just didn't understand the hype. I really didn't. It was really one of these things like, oh, well, they wanted to latch onto a fighter and hope that they would become a champion so that eventually they could say, I knew it from the start. She's just built different. Yeah. Zhang Weili's built different. What is she, 36 years old, still champ? Listen, after the first round, Tatiana Suarez got the takedown when she was fresh and she had all her strength. But after that, it just came down to Zhang Weili obviously being very skilled, but just being fast, explosive, dangerous, just different levels. So the only competition for Zhang, I guess back in the day, she had a couple L's to Rose Namajunas and whatnot, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Tatiana Suarez, she is a good grappler, but her striking has never been great. You know what I mean? Her striking has always been very mediocre, very slow. And so if she was not able to get the takedowns easily on Zhang Weili, which again, I don't understand why people thought it was going to be so easy, because Zhang Weili, strong, stocky, very good wrestling. It's been getting better from fight to fight because she was forced to improve on it after the Rose Namajunas fight especially. It was never going to be an easy fight for her. If she couldn't dominate in the wrestling, she was always going to get destroyed. And for Zhang Weili to then dominate the grappling is very impressive. But the only interesting fight now is against Valentina Shevchenko. And I don't want to hear nobody saying anything along the lines of, no, we want to see Grasso versus Shevchenko first. We got to see the fifth one. Fuck that. I want to see Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko. Tatiana Suarez was the biggest name as a contender in the strawweight division because she was the boogie woman. But now that this fight's out the way, I want to see a double champ fight. Zhang has absolutely earned it. She's defended her belt, 5 times? She has 6 title wins, tying Joanna Jędrzejczyk. It's time to see a double champ fight between her and Valentina Shevchenko. And that's going to be one of the biggest fights in WMMA history. I think that'll be even bigger. Well, it's going to be much bigger than Shevchenko versus Nunes, because that was from before Nunes and Shevchenko had really big names. So that's the fight to make. They got to book it. Co-main event or feature fight. I'd say feature fight. Do that as a feature fight on International Fight Week. Give us like a bantamweight title fight. Then I want Zhang Weili in the feature fight. And then I want, a big main event. So that's what's next. And also, for anyone saying it's time to do Strickland versus Khamzat, fuck that, dude. People used to say Khamzat was the most privileged fighter. Oh, they're going to give Khamzat a title fight. This guy's been in the UFC since 2020. Okay, which is not that long ago, but 5 years, and he still hasn't even fought for a belt. And he's got himself a couple wins at middleweight against Kamaru Usman and against Robert Whittaker. Nasruddin Imavov, listen, he can wait. He just beat a guy that's got 4 out of his last 5 fights. He's lost. Adesanya's lost 4 out of his last 5. Khamzat deserves it more. I don't want to hear nobody talking about Strickland versus Khamzat next. No, Khamzat deserves to fight for the belt. Same with Imavov, but he can wait. All right? Justin Tafa, Tallison Teixeira. This could be the guy, man. I think this is the guy to beat Tom. I really do. I think we finally have somebody to beat Tom Aspinall. This guy knocking out Justin Tafa in the first round is very impressive. I'm joking about him being the guy to beat Aspinall, but you know what? Despite the fact that he doesn't look like he's the most athletic heavyweight, you know what I mean? He's not that dense. He looks like he can maybe make 205, but then again, he's 6'7", so maybe that couldn't happen, but he's like a flabby 6'7", I guess, but He's fast. He's fast. And that clinch striking, that's not the clinch striking of like your average oafy, awkward, tall heavyweight. That was actually some pretty slick clinch striking, knocking out Justin Tafa with an elbow. I thought this was a very impressive UFC debut. I say get this guy a top 15 opponent. I mean, people are going to say, nope, too soon. But, like, come on, man. Get him like a Marcos Rogerio de Lima or something like that. And we'll see if we can run him up the ranks, because Tom Aspinall really doesn't have a lot of competition. If this guy can win a couple of fights, I don't mind seeing him get like a number one contenders fight, just because we need new contenders. So this was a great signing by the UFC. I was dead wrong on this. I thought Tafa was going to knock him out. But Tallison Teixeira, he's not your typical oaf in the heavyweight division. This one surpassed my expectations. Man, I thought that Jimmy Crute was going to dominate after the first round. He knocked down Rodolfo Bellato. He out-grappled him, but then Bellato, just super tough, started to land the leg kicks. Takedown defense got better as the fight went on. They went to war. I guess Bellato slightly edged him out in the second and third, but I will say I actually gave Jimmy Crute the second round, and I think he should have won this fight. I understand you give Bellato the last two. The first one was a 10-8. Of course, it's going to be a draw, but I thought Crute did enough in the second. I mean, sure, Bellato was landing some leg kicks, and sure, he was landing some shots, but it seems like Jimmy Crute was landing the bigger, punishing shots that got more effect out of Bellato. Whereas I think they gave Bellato the round because of how badly he did in the first, and then he made it close in the second. So the contrast was so great that they were like, no, Bellato's coming back. But I thought that Crute should have won this fight. I disagree with it being a draw, but what a fight. It was a war. And, I'm actually kind of surprised that Jimmy Crute was standing and banging with Rodolfo Bellato. Bellato doesn't have a great chin. He's always been a little bit chinny. And I think people overrate his power. You got the commentators just, this guy's hits like a truck. Based on what? He's a guy that, he's like a volume striker in the clinch. He's like a volume break you in the clinch type of guy. He's not like a big one-hitter quitter type of power puncher. It's just because of the way he looks. He's a Pereira. He's going to hit like a truck. No. So, still, despite the fact that Rodolfo Bellato's power is overrated, he's still really tough, gritty, and for Jimmy Crute, whose striking is kind of known to be mid, for him to stand and bang with Rodolfo Bellato is very impressive. I think he deserved to win this fight, though. I really don't think it was a draw. This is one of those fights we complained about it being on the main card, and it was about, as we expected, a mid fight. Jake Matthews has had so many mid fights in the UFC. Again, I picked him to win this because he's more experienced and he's just good enough to edge out a decision over like an up-and-comer or whatever. But man, Jake Matthews fights should not be on the main card of a pay-per-view, okay? I like Jake Matthews, man, but come on, bro. His fights are just so unbelievably mid. There's no imposing of the will going on. It's always this is a Jake Matthews fight. You're going to see tons of punches on the guard. That's basically what we saw against, what's his name? Who's the guy at 170 that just knocked out Neil Magny? Not Prato, the other guy. What's his name? Morales. He fought Morales, and the whole thing was punches to the hands, punches to the guard. That's basically a Jake Matthews fight. Nobody takes a risk. Nobody gets hurt. Tons of punches in the guard. Broken hands, you'll see that because of how many times they're punching the other fighter in the hands, and the elbows. That's basically it, man. Why the fuck was this on the main card, man? So it is what it is. Jake Matthews edged it out. Gabriel Santos, wow. Getting the finish over Jack Jenkins, very impressive. I got that one wrong. I got a ton of these fights wrong. I got this one wrong too. Tom Nolan, impressive, outstriking Vyacheslav Borshchev. I think Vyacheslav Borshchev did pretty well on the ground. Maybe after that Chase Hooper fight, he went back to the drawing board, got a little bit better on the ground. That always seems to be something that he hasn't been good at, but he sort of beat up Tom Nolan in the third round. But for Tom Nolan to outstrike Borshchev is very impressive. But there was always a chance because Borshchev's one of these cobbly guys. He's sort of like an older, more springy Edson Barbozi where sure he can land one of those four-piece combos, but you can also see him sort of springing around. If he gets hit one time, he looks a little bit unstable. Wang Kong gets it done. I got that one wrong. Man, I got a lot of fights wrong. I got this one right. I'm impressed by Colby Thicknesse. This was really impressive from him. I mean, listen, Aleksandre Topuria definitely won. Although I didn't have it 30-27, I had it 29-28. I think that Colby did enough to win the second round. I don't understand why they gave Aleksandre the second round. I really don't. It's not like Aleksandre had established a lot of control time on the ground. Colby just had him on volume. And I didn't expect Colby's striking to be that nimble, and I didn't expect him to be able to keep distance as well as he did and to be as fast as he was. He wasn't super fast, but watching this guy's fights before this actually took place, like he looked a little bit slow, looked a little bit awkward, not stable at all. And obviously Topuria is the more, like, he's rooted to the ground, he's short and stocky and all that, he's powerful. But Colby was moving around on his bike, landing tons of kicks, actually landing some good choppy right hands. He was chopping down with a couple of those 1-2s, catching Topuria. He did better than I expected. But obviously he didn't win. Topuria fights just like his brother. This is why I picked him to win. More patient than Ilya. And Ilya's kind of patient too. But we saw it. Colby was landing the volume in the first round. Topuria was waiting for the moment and landed a big bomb, almost KOing Colby Thicknesse, and then out-grappling him and beating him up a little bit on the ground. And the second round, again, he started doing a little bit better, started landing some heavy leg kicks on Colby, but I still think he didn't have enough volume. But then in the third, he got like 2.5 minutes of control time, and Thicknesse is a good grappler. He's actually a pretty good grappler, and that's no surprise. He trains with Volkanovski, one of the best grapplers in the world. He trains with Craig Jones. So for Topuria to out-grapple Colby, and this is the thing, anyone that's saying that Topuria really disappointed, I think they're kind of underrating Colby, because I see a much improved Colby in this fight. I think he stepped up big time for this one because he looked way better than he has in his previous fights. And this is also Alexander Volkanovski's main training partner, so he's got a lot of the same tricks up his sleeve, right? He's got a great team around him. Topuria, octagon jitters as well. You know, Colby's fighting in his backyard. The stars are aligning a little bit. And Aleksandre Topuria, there's a ton of pressure because Ilya is his brother. And, you know, what if I get KO'd? What if I lose my UFC debut? What if I don't get the finish? You know, I don't really think that he was in a perfect position to have, like, you know, a perfect performance last night. But whatever. He was able to get over the octagon jitters with a win. And still looks pretty good, but just super reserved. I think a little bit more output is what we need from Aleksandre Topuria, because it didn't look like he was getting stung with any great shots. He didn't look like he got rocked, but he was just a little bit too respectful of Colby. Whenever he would actually move forward and let his hands go, which was few and far in between, he would land a big shot and he could kind of bulldoze Colby, right? But we only saw that in the first round. I'd like to see more output from Topuria. His grappling's good. His patience is good, but he's too patient, okay? But either way, Topuria gets it done, fighting exactly like his brother. This was a war. Rongzhu versus Cody Steele. I think this is the best fight on the card. You had Bellato versus Jimmy Crute. That was amazing, but this was even better. This was unbelievable. They were just slugging in the pocket the entire time. There were a few moments where it looked like Cody Steele was on wobbly legs, about to get finished in the first. But, you know, even in the second, when they started to get a little bit tired, they were still slugging, tons of output. This is one of the best fights of the year, if not the best fight of the year. Yeah, amazing performance. Rongzhu just gets it done a little bit faster, a little bit slicker when it came to his defense. Cody Steele didn't have as deep of a tool bag. He was kind of relying on a big, gnarly overhand. And he's a good grappler, but he couldn't really establish any control over Rongzhu. But man, what a fun fight. Both of these guys just basically agreeing to just slug in the middle of the octagon for 3 rounds. A lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one. So shout out to Rongzhu and Cody Steele for having an absolute war. Rongzhu gets it done. Gets it done. This was also a good one. Micallef versus Kevin Jousset. Man, Micallef is powerful. Those freaking body kicks sounding like a baseball bat, bruising the midsection of Kevin Jousset, and also just rocking him on the feet. landing big head kicks. He dropped him in the first round. This was a really, really impressive performance. Yeah, Micallef, great cardio, really good kicks, very powerful. He's going to be a problem in the welterweight division. You know, he's only, 7-1. I think this was his 8th win, 8-1 to beat a guy who has already established himself a little bit in the UFC. Most people picked Kevin Jousset to beat Micallef because of the experience, and he's got pretty slick kickboxing. He trains at CKB. But this was an upset. Also another really good fight. Anshul Jubli versus Quillan Salkilld. This is sad for Anshul Jubli, and it's sad for India. He was 0-1 in the UFC, only male Indian fighter. And in his second fight, it's supposed to be his redemption. He gets KO'd in 20 seconds, dude. This is the worst possible way it could have gone for Anshul Jubli. When I watched it live, I didn't think anything of the stoppage. I was just like, wow, that was a really gnarly knockdown. Didn't think the stoppage was bad. When I saw the replay, and they showed the replay multiple times, it just was a horrible stoppage. I mean, this was an extremely early stoppage. Yes, it was a gnarly knockdown. The sound of the punch was really loud. But Anshul Jubli was on a single leg, and he wasn't a rocked guy on a single leg. He was like really fighting for the single leg. It was more like a flash knockdown. Like he was there. He was all there. And when I saw him complaining before they showed the replay, I was like, dude, this guy is complaining. He's coping and all that. But actually, they should have let this fight go on. I don't know if Anshul would have won. I don't think he would have won. I picked Quillan Salkilld anyway because Anshul Jubli, he's best on the ground, and Salkilld is also really skilled on the ground. But, you know, this was a bad stoppage. It would have been good to see him fight on a little bit just because he was fully there. But, wow, does this suck for Anshul Jubli? 0-2, on the verge of getting cut. Things are not going well. And then if he fights again in the UFC, the pressure is going to be even greater. It's going to feel like an even bigger mountain on his shoulders. But what a win for Quillan Salkilld, even though it was an extremely early stoppage. I got this one right. Man, I didn't do well on this card, but then again, there were so many upsets on this card. Like, most people pick Kevin Jousset. Most people pick Cody Steele for a reason. Borshchev, that seemed to be the right pick. So everyone's saying, oh, bro, you did so terrible on this card. Like, there were just a lot of upsets, straight up. Like, not many people believed that Jimmy Crute was going to come back and have a war and be able to get it done on the feet, even though this was a draw. I think Jimmy Crute actually won this fight. Yeah, and then UFC debut heavyweight, you never know what you're going to get. Right. Zhang Weili getting it done. Dricus getting it done. I got the main event, got the co-main event. But yeah, I think that Dricus's performance really impressed me, even though I expected him to win this fight. 50-45ing Sean Strickland on the feet is crazy. You know what I mean? Just as we thought it was crazy for Sean Strickland to 49-44 Adesanya, this is also this is crazy. I mean, Sean Strickland, best defense. Dricus Du Plessis didn't have any issue with the defense. No issue at all. Was lighting him up. Had him all bloody at the end of the fight. Broke his nose. Fucked him up to the body. Damn near got him out of there in one of those rounds. Just an amazing performance. And again, Sean Strickland, whenever he actually lets his hands go and brawls and has like a Max Holloway moment, he's unhittable in those moments and lands 100% of his strikes. And no opponent can ever get the better of him in those situations. If he just fought with 50% of that intensity, he could do a lot better in these fights. But he doesn't. So let me know what you guys think. I thought this was a pretty good card, even though on paper it was terrible. It played out pretty well. And yeah, Dricus, Zhang Weili, further cementing their legacy as some of the greatest fighters to ever do it. We need a Zhang Weili versus Valentina fight, and we need a Dricus versus Khamzat fight next. And then after that, if Dricus can beat Khamzat, one more win at middleweight, and I think he's the middleweight GOAT. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you disagree with that, please name me more than 3 good Anderson Silva wins. What are you saying, man? Anderson Silva beat, yeah, exactly. Dricus Du Plessis, Adesanya, Strickland, Whitaker, Till, Brunson, okay? Tavares, okay? And now Khamzat. Look, I'm not saying he's a middleweight GOAT. I'm not saying that. But he's done a lot of work at middleweight. He's beaten a ton of fighters. And if you're not that impressed with Till and Brunson, okay, Whitaker, Strickland, Adesanya. Whitaker and Adesanya are both top 5 middleweights of all time. if he beats Khamzat, who's undefeated basically, who's a boogeyman, like a real boogeyman, that would be an insane win. That would be even more impressive than like Merab beating Umar. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Because like when Merab beat Umar, Umar's resume wasn't that great. Khamzat's actually got himself a pretty good resume. Burns, Usman, Whitaker. Like, he's putting together some incredible wins. So, yeah, I don't see how it's far-fetched to say, like, Khamzat and then another guy, Imavov. If he beats both of those guys, like, dude, I'm sorry, that's the middleweight GOAT, whether you like it or not. So, Du Plessis getting pretty close to that top 15. I'll say that, okay? One more win, and I think he's in the top 10, right? If it's against Khamzat. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.